Hey, Guy here. My awesome guests this week are Amit Goswami and Valentina Onisor, both MDs that reside out in India, and they're just beautiful human beings. They've both combined years of wisdom to be on to develop essentially a scientific path to spiritual transformation. And if you enjoy this conversation and you enjoy the exploration of wholeness, I should say, be sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button on my YouTube channel, and leave a comment below. That way you are helping me and everybody else get this information directly out there to more people that I feel should be hearing it at this time. Enjoy the show. Catch you soon. Amit, Valentina, welcome to the podcast. I'm truly honored to have you both here today. I was just saying off air, and I want to share with the listeners as well. It's very rare that I have two guests on the show as well. So I'll do my best to be able to navigate the conversations. We don't talk over each other and guiding it. But if I ask one of you a question, please, if the other one wants to add something to the end, absolutely go for it. And anything and whatever your heart's desires, please share today. We have incredible listeners, incredible audience that are very open-minded to this work, I have no doubt. And I'm looking forward to sharing the wisdom, because your publicist was very kind enough to post me the Quantum Brain, and I've been delving through it. And as always, I feel like I need to read it 10 times to really start to fully understand it, but before we dive into the book, what I'm really interested in is how you guys ended up coming together. And I'm going to start with you first, Valentina, because I believe you're a physician, you work with families, and it seems such a great correlation to then be diving in the world of quantum with Amit, who's a professor. I mean, how did it happen?
So actually, I was born in a family of doctors and priests, so I was into spirituality and all this science and spirituality actually together since I was very, very early age, And then I also got into yoga and meditation pretty early in my life.
Wow.
And I saw Amit's two movies, this What the Bleep Do We Know, for a while. And then eventually, I think maybe 6 years ago or something like that, somebody invited me to India, to Pyramid Valley, to university that was about to be set up. That was the initial plan with Amit. And that was the plan of that lady, to have me also part of them, because she knew me a little bit. I was also traveling to India. I was doing all kind of retreats myself. And that was the initial plan, to have something starting there. And we met Amit, and of course, the click was immediate there. It was just so beautiful, because I felt what I need to bring in. And of course, like what he was saying was exactly what I was living, for so much time. And then it didn't happen. So that university didn't happen. But then eventually, like, we just went through other projects and other things, and now it's happening actually. So in the last 3 years, we started another university, which is offering master and PhD. So very interesting, how we just took off and then did other projects, and now really it came to that, and much, much more beautiful and harmonious and everything.
Amazing. And Amit, what about you? What is your mission, your purpose by combining forces to continue to get this work out there? What is the vision behind it?
Well, collaboration is always more fun than working solo. And also, when we had the university, it was seeming more and more very difficult for me to handle all the teaching by myself, especially when I am a theoretician. I make no bones about it. I have not healed one single person in my entire life in any tangible way. Considering that I have not a therapist, none of these things. I'm not a spiritual teacher who teaches meditation, not that either. Basically, my forte is getting intuitions, insights, creativity, writing books, and I lecture fairly well, accent and all. so when Valentina came, of course, initially, many people come to me, but of course, they are not committed enough to work. This is not an easy task. So when we clicked, it was a surprise. But of course, I was not expecting anything like what happened subsequently. Um, she simply is a brilliant person, at once extremely heart-oriented. So it's a very wonderful combination. Intellectually, I work in the intellectual domains probably a little bit better than her, but she works in the heart domain better than me. So it works out very beautifully, complementary way, and the research goes likewise. Uh, I usually deal with more of the intellectual, and then she is very instrumental in raising the emotional issues and also the expertise. She has medical expertise that is very helpful. So the collaboration is going beautifully. The teaching is going beautifully. It's a wonderful collaboration.
Amazing. Yeah, it's interesting. I work with two other practitioners, and a male and a female. And when we brought the female in and the female energy, it's just been absolutely fabulous. And it certainly allows me to work from my heart more as well when doing this work. I totally understand what you're saying. I'm interested in, before diving into more the specifics of the book and the quantum brain, I'm fascinated around the word heal, healing, and even now bringing in quantum to it. Because as far from what I can see and what I'm seeing in the mainstream narrative and in the world right now, you guys are a rare breed. Like, you're looking at this in a hugely holistic way. And I was wondering if you could just speak to a little bit about that, and why it's so important to be looking at this aspect as well as we bring it into, I guess, our overall well-being.
Yeah, of course.
Should I? So you want to know? Okay, so brain. Look, brain is a very wonderful instrument, no question. It has, however, three concentric shells, and evolution-wise, the innermost shell is the first one, the reptile brain, and then we have a mammalian brain called the midbrain, limbic system, and then we have the cortex, which is our pride and joy. Cortex is where we have self-identity. Cortex is where we have thinking located. So for human beings, there is an enormous tendency of being fixated on the cortex, neocortex or cortex. That is okay, except that the midbrain has all these negative emotional and pressure circuits, and they are mostly unconscious in us. We don't have conscious control. We have lost it. So the first thing, of course, that people have is not only the problem of how, when consciousness is represented in the brain, it gradually gets constricted, a constricted state that we experience as the ego. And then it develops personality as we grow up. So this combination, ego and personality, converts the universality of our consciousness into a not only a very constricted consciousness, but very much hierarchical consciousness. And that hierarchy, that I only know that I'm conscious, as far as I'm concerned, you are just an object in my consciousness. That hierarchy is implicit always. We always inside feel superior to the other that we are relating to. It may come out as an inferiority, but inside it begins always as superiority, because I know I'm conscious, but I don't know that you're conscious, from the ego state. So that fundamental ignorance produces a kind of I am the only one who knows, that kind of touch of megalomania. It's not just Donald Trump, it's in every one of us. So that me-centeredness plus the emotional brain, which you have lost touch with, plus the pleasure orientation, these three aspects, and now you add the information addiction that we have, these four aspects has made growing up extremely difficult. Moreover, the parents are busy, both parents work, so childhood trauma has become much more common. So these five things, already we have this lowest level brain condition, human condition. Plus, we have this parents not working, giving us not enough attention in the growing up period, and trauma. This combination is the combination that raises the question of health in a major way. So we don't have a brain which helps us to grow up healthy, and that not growing up healthy leads not only to psychological disorders, but also health disorders in a major way. And this is where Valentina's contribution was enormously good. I had some elementary notions that this growing up has much to do with autism, hyperactivity, and why some people get so lost in the intellectual, not so much in the heart. So all this leads to disease eventually and trauma. But the combination of the two, our collaboration here was the most useful, very useful.
Yeah.
Can I add something?
Please.
So, because it's a lot, of course, it's a great subject. And you see that the medicine nowadays is kind of a pessimistic system, right? It's so many names for diseases and just one name for health. And people don't even know what is that, because we missed, like, gradually as we age or whatever, you don't even know what is that state of health. You don't even know to what to refer to. So the quantum healing and what we come with as quantum integrative medicine, we are just writing another book, which will be finished very soon and printed. And that's positive. We kind of emphasize the need to change this paradigm in healing, right? So kind of to see the full part of the glass, kind of, and emphasize that rather than just trying to heal from this little thing, and you eventually try to see what is the resonance, what got you into that situation, right? And of course, work with mental hygiene, first of all, because if many things are repressed, suppressed there, those have to be taken out and solved also. But eventually, you are building yourself. So there are stages, and then of course quantum healing, which is that kind of healing that maybe you want to refer to. It's a manifestation of the supramental level. Okay, nothing else. And it's really, even if you think of leaps as being sudden events, right? So they are indeed sudden events, but what we need to do is preparation. And sometimes the preparation takes a lot of time. So it's never a quick fix. And we live in this mentality, which most of us, is just referring to these quick fixes. You don't even want to take a pill or an injection for something. You just want something quick, but you don't want to really change yourself or transform yourself, So it's about transformation also when we refer to quantum, because there are indeed miracles. We just don't look at them, right? We call them miracles. And yes, there are manifestations of divine grace, but also in the same time, you can apply what we call the creative process. Like this, in all the books, you will find references to that.
Absolutely. And I always think about my own journey in my own life, because I was just a guy from Wales. I'm just a guy in Australia now. Like, not much has changed, but myself has changed along the way. And I think about the old self, and I often think about that I wouldn't have been able to relate to a lot of the things that are being shared and said, because I just didn't have any experiences, and I was so entrenched in the ego and the construct and the hierarchy of meaning. It just, I just wasn't even aware of it in any shape or form, and it was there in front of me the whole time. And every book I read, I intellectually got it, but I didn't get it because I hadn't experienced anything of it.
That's the thing. So actually, when you have the understanding together with the practice and you integrate them, that's already tapping into the supramental level, actually, and that's when you can grasp that experience.
Sorry, Valentina, go ahead.
No, that's what I said. So whenever these kind of experiences and you integrate both, then the experience is yours, so it becomes yours and nobody can take it from you.
So what we have done in the book is to say that, look, this base level human condition that is causing us both ill health and ill mental health is due to the fact that we operate at the Newtonian level of the brain, our physiology as given, as we are born with. And then we make it worse in our growing up because of the current culture. Current culture does not help. In the olden days, there were certain ways that we supported each other emotionally, and therefore the negative emotional impact was not so heavy. People lived in joint families, therefore again, me-centeredness was not so heavy either. Information processing does not exist. People knew that understanding is important, meaning is important, purpose is important, values were important. Of course, the major difficulty in the olden days was that I'm only talking about the upper echelon of the society. The lower class never got any of these things. So in modern time, we have certainly improved the lower class survival ability, no doubt, and that has to be acclaimed. But at what a sacrifice. We have completely demolished what we call civilized existence of the human being. That was in the process of elevating the survival-oriented people, even the upper echelon has become survival-oriented and nothing else. Survival plus what it means to have wealth, what it means to be rich is pleasure, more pleasure. The lower class cannot have so much pleasure, we can have so much pleasure. So this attitude, or rather Newtonian brain, is the one that we are using and aggrandizing, and in the process making our body and the brain sick. This process, the stopping it, is readily available. In the olden days, our ancestors, fortunately, actually did take some quantum leap and change brain physiology to a certain extent. Today we say that, okay, brain may have some, God consciousness, this God spot in the brain. Anthony Newberg discovered it. Very good couple of books. People laugh about it, but it's no laughing matter. There really are software that our ancients developed, which is in the collective unconscious, which we can, everybody has already the built-in ability to activate those, to trigger those into action. But unfortunately, we don't. And because of the culture. So when we grow up, we ignore those aspects which expresses in the body as love, as self-respect in the navel chakra. And this is what eventually becomes a very brain-centered living. Brain controls the body also, not only body's functions, but body's emotions as well. Namely, brain does not want to participate in this love self-work, and therefore those circuits are never activated. And this is what we call the base level human condition. Because in the olden days, there was the scope of negating the negative impact of the negative emotional circuits with positive emotional circuits that we also have in conjunction with the body. But they are not triggered. They're in the collective unconscious, they have to be triggered. And that triggering not happening is the problem. And how can we do it better? We have to activate the quantum brain. Quantum brain, that ability is lost. Now we have to take a quantum leap to the quantum action of the brain, so that the brain occasionally does become coherent, does become active all over, does initiate these circuits into action once again, does adjust to the body waking up to love and self-worth. And that's what makes us a much, much better being.
So what you're saying, if I just want to recorrect this, and maybe Valentina, you can add to this, then is that then if you don't use it, you lose it, and then we actually have the potential to, every human being then has the potential to be in more love, be in more compassion, and genuinely feel and come from that place. But because we're not using it, we're not aware of it, and it's laying redundant within the body. Would that be a fair estimate to say?
Yeah. And so that quantum brain, again, is that part of the brain that can bring new potentialities into manifestation. But even that, you see that if you think of the power of choosing, right? We don't even know what are our choices in the base level human condition, you see? So we are dominated by all this human condition, the base level existence, by whatever the conditions. We are truly conditioned very much. You see how sensitive we are to what's happening in the world right now. I can see that people are not truly thinking anymore, So it's like freezing. Your mind is freezing, and then you're, of course, very easy to be controlled, right? What to speak about evolution, okay? But so that capacity to choose, you do it. We emphasize in the book, again, I'm mentioning that mental hygiene and training your attention. Yeah, without that, again, you may have all kind of manifestations of grace, and your heart may even explode of love and compassion at some point, but you're just forgetting about that, right? So you have to have this process of creativity, so that everything you need to learn how to work, how to use the power of your intent, which comes when you develop the capacity to choose. You become aware, first of all, where you are. It's fine wherever you are, it's excellent. You just have to see that honestly. That honesty also is disappearing nowadays. We are just having so many masks, and right. And then start working from there. And of course, there's so much potential at all the levels which are waiting for us. Also, of course, at the level of the heart, at the level of the brain, at all the levels, actually. We are like slipping on a mine of diamonds, truly.
Got it. And can we explore the thoughts and the feelings a little bit more? Because, and I pulled something from your book as well about the thoughts and feelings are quantum in behavior. And could you address just a little bit about the word quantum? Because my concern is that people would shut down from that, and if they don't understand that, then it's like, well, how can my thoughts and feelings be quantum, and how are they behaving?
The word quantum itself produces a barrier, because if they look up the dictionary, quantum just means etymologically quantity, discrete quantity. So that is not the essence of quantum. The essence of quantum, the fact that objects are not Newtonian, but they are quantum. This statement simply means that objects are not determined objects. Objects are not objects which movement can be determined by knowing about the forces and initial movement of the object. That's not possible at all. Because the object is an object of possibility. It's a wave of possibility. The interactions that give us the state of the object, state of movement of the object, and at any given time, that state is not a determined state of definite movement. That, okay, the object is here, the object is moving at this speed. No, we cannot determine that. Instead, what it gives is that the object is in a state of many possible positions, many possible velocities. And so the way to think of it for the layperson is that a determined object becomes object of possibility. Something that was determined, I could not do anything about it, completely objective, completely independent of my consciousness. Instead, it was not like that at all. It always is a combination of various possibilities, and consciousness chooses. So my problem is that I, in my ego, have lost some of that choice. How do I bring back that choice? So the Newtonian happens, Newtonian reality is real for people with a brain because we, by conditioning, via development of the constriction of the ego, we are developing all these things, me-centeredness, etc., that we talked about. We have lost that capacity of choice because we move in a very constricted consciousness.
Right.
But if we could, through meditation and creativity, elevate our condition of consciousness, then we could experience the objects as subject to our choice. And that makes the whole of it different. That makes us creative, that makes us able to choose meaning instead of meaningless, health instead of disease, and happiness instead of misery. This is the secret. It's very simple to explain it. But that's what quantum means. Instead of determined and independent of us, possibility and our choice determines the ultimate reality.
Wow. So, in other words, we are able to either restrict ourselves down and say there's absolutely no possibility, this is my destined path and there's nothing I can do about it because this is what I see in the current paradigm of the egoic hierarchy structure of the Western world that we've kind of fallen into. And then what you're saying is then we're moving into the quantum, which actually means that there is a wave of potentiality right here, right now to be had. So why aren't we then supporting ourselves to lean into possibility and let's have more of that as opposed to defaulting back to the old way continuously? Would that be fair to say?
The brain's condition comes in, the evolution comes in, the brain has become constricted by the necessities of survival and development of these negative emotional circuits in the brain, of which we have lost control. We had control at some point, but we have lost control. And we have become dominated by this me-centeredness because of much of today's culture. It was not like this before. So all these reasons we have created what was opportunity into making them into obstacles, which is what Valentina calls this tensing of the mind, mental hygiene. So we really have the choice of living with a healthy mind. Instead, we fill the mind up with garbage, and that's where we live. And this is part of the problem. This is why a healer is needed. It's just not a question of anything but a question of healing. The whole thing has become, the system is sick. We need to heal it. So quantum brain is the healing. Yeah, go ahead, Valentina.
And the funny thing is that I didn't know until I met Amit this fact that we have embedded in our brain this negative emotional brain circuits. So once you get that, then the situation is changing. Also, that again, that for reasons of survival during our evolution, the brain has taken over the control over these instinctual feelings, which are connected with the lowest three chakras, if you are familiar with that. No, if not, we'll say something. But you see, there's so much survival-oriented things in the world. Even the education, it's not anymore higher education, it's low education, right? It's just you are getting trained to just get a job. You forgot about the meanings at all. So it's just survival and dominance also, this domination. So these are part of the first three chakras, kind of these circuits. And of course, our job is to develop these positive ones and strengthen them over and over. Love, compassion, forgiveness, and all the other things, together again with training our attention, so that we develop that kind of discernment, which is called, so that we can choose that happiness of expansion of consciousness, So the journey towards the quantum, is a journey of increasing intelligence, increasing also health and happiness. They come together. So that's what we want to do, And this discrimination to choose happiness of expansion rather than the happiness of these small pleasures, which often contracts the consciousness. And that's what we call awakening of intelligence. And it's more than choosing than the bossy brain to choose this kind of happiness of ananda, real intelligence rather than machine intelligence.
Yeah. So Valentina, I want to pick your brains a little bit there, because you triggered off some great loops for me as well. And because if we've been, like you say, we go into the school system, the whole structure, and we kind of schooled a certain way now, and everything is coming from the base three chakras, like you say, around about survival, safety, creating dominance, and our will and forcing things to happen moving forward. When we're at the point in our life where maybe the larger aspect of ourself wants to come through more, and that's our heart spoken, but often we can feel like we're having a midlife crisis, or we're starting the old construct starting to break down. um, we because we've spent our entire life interpreting our I guess our reality a certain way, and the thoughts and the feelings that we have unconsciously on a moment to moment basis are obviously giving rise to the way we see reality. How do we then start to, I guess, work with ourselves to get beyond those thoughts, those feelings, to then start to move into this realm of possibility and quantum, as opposed to allowing them to pull us back into the old way, where we go back and shut down and go into the way where we're doing it the old route?
Yeah. So of course, as you see, this journey takes a lot of courage, you know. And the funny thing is that we live so much like we are keeping the brakes in the car, you know. So that's how we are living. Actually, we are mostly reacting than acting, as you know. And we need to get the courage, you know. I mean, we are here for a very short while, you know. So all that is you're opening, you come in this life, you do some blinking, and then you're going, you know. So the thing is that we have to also learn to live a little bit more passionate, you know, in the same time, you know, like with more, how to say, with courage, not with so much fear. Yeah. And it's, of course, now what you see, that what's happening is so much fear and anxiety. But the thing is that this kind of crisis, as any kind of crisis in the world, they are moments which present a lot of opportunities. As you say, the old paradigms and even our old concepts may shake up, and still, if in the middle of all these crises, we may get a moment with ourselves, you know, and we may get that moment that we can say, okay, that enough is enough, and you get to start transforming just from wherever you are, to choose to be on your side. Then God is also choosing that, obviously. So, and of course, what I see that is needed, it's transformational education, you know, education that will transform this human condition into more positive stations of homeostasis, if you can, more health, more prosperity, more happiness. But it has to be a process which is conscious. So it's kind of, as I see it, also from my experience, it's either you learn these things through sufferance or through a conscious way of living. And then you learn about everything, you know, in that state of simplicity and coherence, you know, all these things are presenting in front of you. And to get there, again, it's like many times it's not so far that we may think, especially even in moments of sufferance and pain. That truth may be just in front of your eyes. You just need to take a breath. And for example, this simple way of moving all your attention to the breathing for a few moments in the beginning of the day, in the end of the day, may help you again to see where you are, because otherwise you're gone in the bushes with all this mind only information processing and taking only attention to the outside, not to the inside also.
Of course, of course. And just in your own journeys to, I guess, bring this across and it's tangible for people. What have you, because you obviously you work in the healthcare system and you see a lot of people. Have you do you actively bring this work in with your patients, and what have you kind of seen over the years of what is happening? Is there any examples, stories, anything you could share with the listeners?
Of course. Like I mean, I can give you one which comes to me now, even our students, you know. So we saw our students, and truly, like, I'm so happy to see them. And I have to say that all of them, they passed after they started this process, which again is theory and practice, yeah, and they all went through a process of deep crisis after a while, and coming out of that, I'm just so happy to see that spiritual maturity shining in them, and they are kind of, you can say that this person is together, and yeah, interesting, very interesting actually,
What has happened in the educational system that we have been gradually discovering is a major breakthrough. This started with actually the brain scientists, and they started paying attention to, all right, we don't know very much about the brain. What does the brain actually do? And when they were doing that, they discovered that Descartes and the entire Western civilization that followed from Descartes was wrong in terms of pursuit of rationality alone. Because in truth, what has happened is that the midbrain is a site of emotions, and these emotions are basically, we are unaware of them, we don't have control over them, and therefore stimulus comes and the body plays very little role. Brain takes over the reaction that the body will give, and those reactions are jokingly called 4 Fs. You can guess what they are: flight, fight, feeding, and final one is effing, but I can say the word on live. So those 4 survival-oriented response controls us. And then it really makes it very difficult unless somebody points out, how do I get out of this tyranny of these negative emotional responses? And this is what the problem is. But before, we could only talk about creativity. And when we said creativity, it's the creativity of the mind. So what Valentina and I started discovering, and it's from the beginning of collaboration, that no, we can talk about vital creativity. The energies, vital energies themselves can be creatively elevated. And when we start paying attention to the vital domain, not only we become emotionally intelligent in terms of creating a balance between negative emotion and the positivity that potential in the body, with which we started our talking. Not only we can do that, we can even at some point venture to regain control over the negative emotions and pleasure circuits as well. Imagine that. So when that happens, that's when humanity will take a huge next step to becoming capable of living in a much better quantum capacity. What Aurobindo, the great rishi in India, called the intuitive mind, will have a mental state which will be much more expanded, much more creative, much more happy, much more intelligent. And all these problems that raise constant crisis. You were right. Today we live from crisis to crisis. Where is the time for people to attend to higher, elevated needs, satisfy them? Because they're too lost in the survival. And the few who are not lost in the survival, they are too lost in the pleasure hunting. So the negative emotions basically dominate us. To change that, the mental avenue is not enough, because in the mental avenue too, we get lost in the intellectual pursuit. We don't realize that it is the archetypes, supramental, that really is how we change our present mindset. So we have to take a double barrel approach, where we bring in the archetypes and realize that archetypes can be expressed as noble feelings and higher thinking. And when you do that, properly represent the archetypes in both dimensions of feeling and thinking, emotions and thought, then we get a much better approach to transformation than ever attempted. This is why I think that what Valentina said is very true. We see the change in our students regularly. They wake up quickly because we have taken this double-barreled approach.
And let me add something, because you asked me also from the medical perspective. Of course, I had people, and I'm so happy to work with them. Not so many lately because I'm more into education, but I had quite many, where quantum healing was not so difficult to apply, in various ways. I give you one example. So I had a doctor, and she was just perfectly healthy, but they were just not able to, she was not able to conceive, so they wanted so much to have a baby. And I think I worked with her 1 month only. And I because my intuition guided me to go into that, I figured out that very quickly that she was needing a process of forgiveness. And we just went 3 times through this, and we did a very deep process of forgiveness of herself. And I guided her a little bit towards this archetype of love, which refers also to herself, which is needed a lot for women, especially. And in 1 month, so she's remained pregnant now. She's the mother of a wonderful baby. So that was amazing. They were trying for many, many years to conceive, and she was perfectly healthy. There was nothing there. So this was the blockage which was keeping her, for example.
Amazing. And it actually triggered every time you talk, you trigger so many questions. But because within the book, you talk about, use a great analogy of hardware and software. Okay. And I'd love you to speak to that, but bridging off what you just said, because I'm always very curious to hear people's thoughts about how much the way we think and the way we feel, or what we're holding on to past events and from, like that lady that you worked with that had to work on forgiveness first. How much of that is actually affecting the body as well, from a quantum level, from a hardware software perspective? I mean, I don't know if there's a question there, but can you talk to that a little bit?
Amit? Or hardware, software, he's asking. So the software refers to the function. The hardware, if you want, is like the physical body, for example, the organs. There's a hardware, and the software refers mostly to the function. And that's the thing, you can improve that function very much through different processes like yoga, meditation, Tai Chi, Qigong, all kind of things, and working on this vital energy, vital body also. But not just that, again, like directing the person to discover that meaning. Eventually, I tell you, like when you speak about quantum healing, the person is finding, people with cancer, I had many of that, actually, truly many. Or other terminal diseases, even truly I had in my practice, and I'm still having. And the thing is that the common denominator for all the people which healed, in my experience and also in others, is that eventually they found something to live for, So they found a meaning which was higher and deeper and unexpected, So that's something, and it refers to that software also. And Amit?
What we have discovered also, and this is the study of the brain, it surprised us that we talk about the brain having 2 cells. One is where the quantum modality operates, and one where the ego takes over, which is the Newtonian modality. And then we discovered that there is a half a second gap between the present moment, when the quantum self-experience potentially can occur, does not occur for most people. And then ego is where most people experience reality, and most of us also, even the enlightened, experiences reality when he goes to the bathroom in the ego. So that half a second, though, is a domain of consciousness that is neither unconsciously nor consciously. Freud called it pre-conscious. We use the same language, pre-conscious. And meditation is the way of entering the pre-conscious. So when we look at meditation this way, the whole process becomes a little bit simpler to comprehend how the change comes about. So initially, our initiates learn to get into just observe what the problems are. And then the same meditation, from observing what the problems are, becomes a little bit deeper. We look at, okay, let's look at the state of who is looking at these thoughts and emotions. So we become a bit oriented towards All right, what is the nature of the subject which looks? So that question itself starts us into the journey into the preconscious, because the more we look at a deeper state of the self who is looking at the things. The self who looks at initially is a very, very conditioned ego. But as we look with this idea that we are just seeing how things are, but looking at the perspective of seeing much more than what we see. See, ordinarily, life is concentrated on the objects of experience, but instead, we also watch the subject. And in the process of watching the subject, we discover, the subject is not what I thought it was. It evolves into more and more expansion. And once we discover this expansion of consciousness, people find that this is a very pleasant way to live and relate to the world. And especially the face of the emotions change very much. We see our choices very clearly. A negative emotion comes, I can meditate on it, it disappears, and I can choose the positive. It's not so hard. So it is the quantum yoga that Valentina is especially studying. I'm a helper too. This idea is precisely to work from that increased, expanded consciousness. And this learning that we can change the perspective of looking at the world from a contracted consciousness to gradually improving expanded consciousness is a tremendous help to a person who is trying to transform. This we did not know before. We talked about meditation, but we did not know what it can do, what the potentiality of meditation itself. People talked about relaxation, but they did not understand that relaxation is nothing but a description of an expansion of consciousness. So with this new understanding that the study of neuroscience gave us, neuroscientists are the ones who figured out, yes, they measured that, yes, there is this half a second gap. And this is where the preconscious happenings take place. And if we learn to access the preconscious, we can gradually change our consciousness from the ego constriction into what we call soul level of living.
Wow. It's massive. Like when you think about, or when I think about the current prognosis of you got this problem, here's something we're going to put out the fire, as opposed to looking at what caused it in the first place. It feels to me that this is the first thing we should be addressing before we start to address everything else, is the relationship with ourselves and how we see that in any given moment at any given time, to allow us to then move back into and support the body from a place of potential and possibility, which is what we spoke about at the beginning. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, but you see, that's so much, we are so much against ourselves because of all this base level condition, It's so funny, you have to see that. I mean, many people don't see that only after many, many years of sufferance, and of lack of meaning, of just living like a robot, kind of. But eventually, life is so beautiful, and even the diseases, and even these sufferances, they have a message of transformation. So life is helping you, But the thing is that we have to see how we are destroying ourselves with all these negative things which exist there. So unless we approach them, you may be very much evolved, in spirituality. You may even have experiences, very high experiences, and still you may have to really go back and work with some little things there which otherwise may put you down, So if you're not honest enough to just face them and accept them and truly start working with them, because there are these traits of your characters which can come, of course, from other lives. We speak about incarnation. There's so much evidence about that, right? And in this life, it's your task to work through these things, There's more power of transformation which is waiting for you there, So it's nothing bad, truly.
Yeah, amazing. I'm just aware of the time, but I want to ask you a couple of questions before we wrap up the show. And one is, with everything going on in the world right now, there's a lot of fear out there. And with your guys' education and background and bringing this incredible work forward, are you optimistic of our future right now? And Ah, and I don't know if that's even answerable, but and are other physicians and people that can truly help others looking at this work? How do you feel it is going so far?
Yeah, we are both, I think, basically optimistic, but you have to qualify that a bit. We
Yeah.
were very optimistic. I remember when I first started, realized the oneness of everything, that mystics are right, science and spirituality can be integrated. I was a little bit uh, too optimistic, unrealistically optimistic. I thought, okay, once this message is given, then people will go right back to the spiritual values. They must be missing them. No, the inculturation of this culture is very deep. No longer people miss those things. People don't miss very much the absence of love in their life. People don't miss very much that they are not fair to the other, and therefore that is causing some of their own uh, discomfort. Uh, they don't realize how racism not only is a hatred of the other race, but it also hatred of myself, because why can't I be better? So this basic ignorance has become much deeper. The ignorance of the Indian peasant that I also know, I also encounter sometimes, even now, that is an innocent ignorance. That is what prevalent everywhere in the world is in the past times. Innocent ignorance in the sense that they just didn't know any better. They did what comes and very little awareness of what is happening beyond the survival. That can be changed very easily by education. But this kind of ignorance, where I deliberately have eliminated certain things that existed before, everybody knows that yes, there are books, religious books, spiritual books that are talking about love. Yes, there are literature which is talking about love, goodness, justice, all these things. But they purposefully say that no, they're just political messages. It has nothing to do with the human being. We don't have to do that. And that purposefully choosing the lack of value, this is something that is very difficult to work with. So what we found, and this is where our optimism came back, we found that, okay, there must be people like us. So we started trying to find, okay, how many people are there that are like us? And what my surprise was, and Valentina were too, when as soon as she came to the travel circuit, is that there is a demand for this traveling through others, as we call ourselves, because they're not getting this kind of education in schools and colleges. So they come and flock to us, huge conference gatherings and huge people who identify themselves even explicitly with New Age. So how much are they? How many people are actually practicing something like yoga or meditation? And it's not a small percentage, 15%. Can you believe it? And this is what made us again optimistic. Okay, if there is 15%, we can work towards enlarging this. Can it be 30% by 2050? And we believe that the kind of education that I have started, transformative education, we can easily reach the goal of 30% more towards consciousness and orientation towards expansion, inclusion, will grow, and humanity will have a substantial number that cannot be ignored, that cannot be denied, whose voice will have an impact on the educational system, on the social systems. So we are kind of, yes, very optimistic initially. There was a flop because, of course, that was not true, the initial assumptions. But then we realized that there are really a polarization much deeper than Democrat, Republicans, or political polarization, or religious versus materialist. Those polarizations are there, of course. But the real polarization that is important is we have 15% people who are into awakening, and then 85% of people who are completely in that base level human condition, almost completely. But there is gradually a transition from one to the other. In other words, the number 15% is increasing, the number 85% is decreasing. How quickly we make this happen depends on how many emissaries of this new message we can create by educating, concentrating on this 15%, not wasting it on the 85%, because they are extremely difficult to reach for us. The thing is that they cannot get the message precisely because what you already identified. That how can we change these people? No, we cannot change these people overnight. It's not possible. Those people we can encourage, they will be hugely enthusiastic if they hear us and tune to us because they feel our love. But as soon as they go out of our sphere, the other stuff will take over and they will forget completely. They cannot be persuaded to continue, which is meditation, yoga, these practices. And yet we have this 15% who are doing that. And so by realizing that, okay, it's a wastage to concentrate on those people, but concentrate on these people and work with them, changed our optics.
And of course, let me go also to the practical question now. What's happening now? Actually, I have even friends or people that I know which are part of this 15%, but somehow even interesting enough, some of them, because of what's happening in the world right now, still they are very much affected, and even some of them die. So this is also something interesting to see. So there is a very interesting game of things in the world. We have to see what is there, and we need to be responsible and become human. So the thing is that in the middle of this sufferance, we need to become human, which means give your hand, give a hand to whoever is there and manifest, give something, start giving instead of keeping the things to yourself, which is the tendency based on fear and contraction and anxiety. Start giving whatever you can, a piece of bread, money, or smile, or something good. Just don't go into the isolation mode completely, because that's the tendency there. People are afraid. Vaccinated are afraid of unvaccinated, the other way around also. So it's all this thing which is dangerous, of course, right? But eventually we will come out of this, but let's see how many, kind of.
Beautiful. That was close. It was flashing saying it's about to shut down. So before we wrap up the show, I always ask a question, and I'd love you both to answer it if there's anything. And essentially is, with everything we covered today, is there anything you want to leave the listeners to ponder on? And I'll start with you first, Amit.
Yeah, what's the question?
With everything we've covered today, is there anything you'd like to leave the listeners to ponder on?
Okay. So the fundamental thing that we discovered in while writing the book is that the brain is actually a wonderful instrument, but not for the reasons that people put it up as a wonderful instrument, not because it does computing in a wonderful way, much better than artificial intelligent machines in some ways. That is there, and that is good, but that's not its forte. It is true that as the brain physiology that is given to us is very limited physiology because of Newtonian conditioning, survival conditioning that took place throughout for millions of years of evolution. But it is also true that the potentialities of brain, a brain that our ancestors worked with to some extent, is already the way that it has been codified. Even that codified potentiality is already better than what most people are aware of. And we can discover this, what is already available, much quicker than we discovered the rest of it, which requires much more creative work. So what we discovered is it's possible to be emotionally intelligent, to balance these negative emotional tendencies, even with just the awareness of what we already have in potentiality. It does not require that much of work except some meditation, some creativity, some engagement with the emotions to try to balance them. Some desire, we call it intention to transform. I want meaning and purpose in my life. I want to be aware of feelings in the body. And these few things, making that part of the affirmation can make huge changes. And of course, everybody talks about neuroplasticity today. So what is neuroplasticity but the change in software that we do with these efforts? And it is not difficult to do because, as I said, the potentiality is already there in our collective unconscious. So you have to make a little bit of effort because we have to go from the personal to the collective unconscious. And we have to make that happen in the unconscious, but due to conscious efforts as well. So we engage in creativity. It's a process of do and be, a process of conscious and unconscious. And that's how we affect the unconscious through our conscious efforts. This is the process. It's simple, it's doable, and many of us are already doing it, including all three of us. And therefore, our viewers, our listeners can get encouragement because so many, 15% are working this kind of talk that Valentina and I are presenting, or you are presenting.
Thank you, Amit. And Valentina?
Yeah. So the thing is that there is such a beauty and so much gratitude, which it would be nice if we would become aware of it, for all this life being in a human body, So it's truly a grace. I had moments when I truly was shown what a special thing is to be on earth, in a human body and in these times, truly. And if we would learn to cultivate this kind of circuit, manifest gratitude because we have so much that we are taking just for granted. And even starting from there, practicing gratitude for having water in the shower, for having two arms, for having two legs, or whatever else, There are so many things, and somehow the way we lived in the last, many years, it took us to lack, to kind of to miss these kind of things, And even that is something which anybody can do. And gradually this will bring a common sense, which is like a paranormal capacity nowadays, we lost so much of track of common sense as well. And then you will see that you are truly like, we can actualize that oneness, which otherwise we are not one, we are saying we are one, but we are not really one unless you actualize it. And you actualize it, of course, by when you become a little bit more awake, and seeing the reality a little bit more clear than what we think is reality. But again, it starts from getting back this kind of common sense, and going into these modalities when you are on your side, And in the same way, again, as I mentioned, responsibility, because we are everything that happens with each of us is truly reflecting and influencing the situation of the world. So even if you're not a murderer per se, but inside of you, who knows what wars you're fighting there with yourself, So it's again, quantum refers to the subtle. Okay, so whatever happens in the subtle level, even if you may slightly in the outside, but if there are still wars to fight in within, just get to that state of peace and be on your side, manifest this courage to be on your side. And then, of course, that will manifest for the others as well. Okay, so I'm very happy.
Yeah, no, beautiful. Yeah. I love it. Manifest to be on your side. That's so true. And guys, I just want to say thank you. The Quantum Brain, the book is available, I'm assuming, on Amazon, and they could purchase it from there. And I'll make sure there's links in the show notes as well. So anyone listening to this can pause and they'll be able to click through to your website below, and also head over towards the book as well. But can you just say the website out loud as well, just for the people in audio?
AmitGoswami.org. And then if you want to write us, you can write at info@amitgoswami.org.
Beautiful. I'll be sure to put that in as well. And I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show today. You guys are rock stars, and it was an absolute privilege to have you both together like this and have this conversation. And I truly hope it'll bring more awareness in the future as well. So thank you for all that you
All
do.
that you do.
And for everything
Thank
that
you,
put out there.
Guy. You're wonderful.
Thank you.
It's so wonderful to be with you.
Thank you.